Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you enjoying your NYSCATE conference experience thus far? So I see that the line at the Italian Ice is now dying down a bit, so we can get on with the main afternoon piece. Last night, for those of you that were at our opening banquet, NYSCATE gave out $12,000 in grants to support 6 school districts. We do that every single year. So we urge you, please apply online. So with that, I also will share with you what we will be giving away through the scholarship drawing tomorrow. We have various gift certificates to Best Buy, Target, American Express. We have software license packages through many of our sponsors and our vendors. We have an iPad, iPad cases, Apple TV, Chromecast, Chromebooks, Kindle Fires, and an HP tablet. So please, if you take a moment, tickets are $1 a piece and arm's length for $5, but every single penny that's raised for that goes right back to you for some innovative ideas throughout the state. This afternoon, I am pleased to introduce Shawn Bay, who is the CEO and founder of eScholar, as our keynote. eScholar provides the data management software used across New York State and many other states. Shawn presents both on a statewide and national level on various topics. Today, he'll be sharing his experience over 3 decades using data to improve not just education, but many other industries as well. Mr. Bay will share some of his observations from other industries, which should shed some light on changes that are currently happening in education, and some that certainly will, that you'll all want to pay close attention to. Since 1997, when Shawn founded eScholar, his mission, which is so incredibly important why he's here with us today, but Shawn's mission has been to use data to help students succeed, which is what we all do every single day. Shawn grew up on a farm in Kentucky, learned about emerging database technology in graduate school in the early 1980s, and was chosen to be one of the small team at Procter & Gamble that essentially launched the data warehousing business intelligence, big data industry. Since then, Shawn's knack for being involved in the many of the interesting developments in the use of data earned him the nickname, and you pay close attention, the Forrest Gump of data. I know this is a discussion that we should all pay close attention to, as we all know that data will play an increasingly important role. Last year, we had Paige Davis from Intel share a bit about big data, and this is the next step today. So please join me in welcoming CEO of eScholar, Shawn Bay, to the stage.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you all for having me here today to speak with you. I've actually worked for essentially all of you for about almost 2 decades now. Some of you I've known for that whole period of time, and most of you I've never met. So this is my opportunity to talk with you about what we've been doing in eScholar, what we've been doing in other industries as well, and to talk about why we're doing this and where we see it all going. Now, one thing, this all started here in New York back in 1997 when we started pulling together data. And really, since that time, New York has been on the leading edge of using data to help individual students succeed. And we've worked with you on that. I recognize that being on the leading edge is difficult. Sometimes it's painful, but it's making a difference. It's making a difference not just here in New York, but it's making a difference really across the country. As we mentioned, we do this across, I believe, 13 states now, but it started here in New York, and the leading edge is still here in New York. So what we've been focused on is to really build on the positive impact that we can have using data and technology and really truly transform education. And the transformation that we're seeing is in some respects really quite simple. What we see is that you can use technology and data to enable educators to do what they're passionate about, which is really helping each individual student be successful. Now, I know I'm talking about data, and a lot of people think about test scores, Lexiles, those kinds of things. And those are data, and they're useful. But what I'm really talking about here is something much more comprehensive than that. We're talking about using all of the data that can help a student succeed. So one thing I will say, I've been doing this now 17 years just in education alone. And I would say today, the majority of data use is still around accountability. So it's taking data and using it to understand how education is working. So looking at the number of students reading a grade level, looking at the number of students that scored a 3 on the state assessment, breaking that out by ethnicity, looking at it over time. And what I've learned is if the only use of data is for accountability purposes, that can only lead to frustration. Because what it's going to tell you is what needs to be improved. And you're going to find lots of things. This is a very complex endeavor in education. But it's not going to tell you how to improve that and why. So what I want to talk about here, I get a kick out of being called sometimes the Forrest Gump of data. And unfortunately, I'm sure it's not because I remind anybody of Tom Hanks. But I have been there for essentially all of the important things that have happened in data over the past almost 3 decades now, really. In fact, I was there in 1999 when Bill Gates went to New Orleans at AASA and announced that he was going to transform education by putting data in the hands of educators. There might have been a little bit of Photoshop involved in that picture. But I actually really was there in 1999 when that happened. But I couldn't find a picture where I was actually in there with Bill Gates. Again, in 2013, I was there in Austin, Texas, when Bill Gates announced that he was going to transform education by putting data in the hands of educators. And that picture, got a little better picture of it this time. But I've been there for a lot of the things that have happened in education over the years. And not just in education data, but really beyond that. So like the Forrest Gump story, I'm going to give you a quick history of some of the things we've seen because a lot of them have a great deal of relevance in education. So prior to 1997, I did a lot of work with big data in healthcare, consumer packaged goods, retail, insurance, telecommunications, you name it, lots of different industries. And what we saw was data, the use of data could have a profound impact. And the efforts that we were involved in, they included accountability. Everybody has their version of accountability reports. But the efforts were always focused on how do we use these data to improve the performance of our enterprise, whatever we were doing. And that always boiled down to how can we use these data to better serve everybody who walks through our door. They use our services, they come into our store, they're our customers. How do I serve each one of those better? That mindset was universal across every industry that I've been involved in. Then in 1997, I got involved in education, and I had a lot to learn. Now, there was the focus. A lot of people here, you all, I'm sure, care very much about how do we serve each individual customer better. But the system didn't work the same way. Now, realize this was a different time. Back in the late 1990s, our technological capabilities were very different. Just think about it. If a student had a device in school, if they had a phone, it wasn't a smartphone. And in 1998, that was the first time you could download content to a phone, and that was a ringtone. Okay, now compare that to today and what we can do with technology and with data. So things have changed. So one of the things that I've learned in this industry, in education and in other industries, is that accountability alone doesn't work. What we need are data and technology that can be used to see what needs to be improved, to see how to improve that, and In a lot of cases, you can even use the data and technology to facilitate that improvement. So I recognize the last couple of years particularly have been pretty tumultuous in education data. But what I can say is that progress on using data and technology to help improve education has continued, and it won't stop. And it won't stop because it does work. It's more than pockets of success. I mean, there's a great deal of success happening now in using data to help individual students. I know there's been a lot of controversy about student data privacy. There's even been arguments that we shouldn't collect any education data. What I know is that we can't improve the education system consistently without data. You know, can each one of us do our job better without data? We can, but we can't do that consistently without data. In fact, we really can't even do what we're doing today without data. We can't get the school buses to the right spots on time without data. So privacy is absolutely essential. It is an essential responsibility of us and anyone else involved in this, in education. One of the things we know is, first we have to make sure that we're keeping data safe, and we're keeping students safe before we can go on and do good things with it. So first we have to make sure we do no harm. Now I know that there have been people who've entered this field in the past few years who didn't understand that, and I believe that's actually caused us harm. It's caused harm to a lot of the initiatives that we've had in place. It's just walking out there, even if you don't do something wrong, if you don't understand how important data privacy and security is, that's harmful to us, and I believe we have seen that over the past couple of years. Thankfully for us, you made it very clear to us from day one how important that responsibility was. And we do take it seriously, and we've worked with you. In fact, I know a number of you have us do training now on data security and data privacy. So one of the things I want to promote is that anybody who does anything in the field of education understands how important that is. Because the first rule is, before we can do anything valuable with data, we have to make sure that we cause no harm. Let me talk about what I've learned, particularly in education, kind of my education on education. One of the first things I saw, and it was possibly some of the folks in the audience here that I was working with back 17 years ago, that you showed me the power of education data. You showed me that you could actually see. Now, I was integrating together data, not understanding necessarily exactly what you were going to do with it, but what I got to see was, okay, if you could pull together data about what was occurring outside of your classroom, and over time, you could do things with it that could help students. And you could do things that you wouldn't know to do without those data. So what I could see was, even the most engaged teacher is very unlikely to know a lot of the things that you could learn from data. So for me, the realization was, I'd seen the most important thing I would ever get a chance to do was to actually help on a big scale to help educators use data to help students, because I could see that it would work. Let me put that in context. I'd done work with Walmart and other retailers way back in the 1980s. And again, we were using data, and this was to serve their customers better. And the result is that they can put the right product on the right shelf for every customer that walks in the door. They can do it less expensively because they've got the right product. They're not inventorying the wrong product in there. So Walmart's got lower costs. And you get what you want. They make more money. You have lower prices. Everybody's happy. I'm proud of those things that I did. So we did good things. Now let's contrast that to education and what the opportunity is there. What I could see back in 1997 was I had an opportunity to make a difference. It's a small difference or a large difference, I don't know, but to make a difference in the education of millions of students. So when I compare that to the kind of work that we've done in other industries, there was no comparison. I knew that this was what I wanted to do with my life. So one of the things that we see, and we see this in lots of different fields, is every single customer that walks through the door, every individual is unique. And the objective is, how do we actually meet that uniqueness through data? Now, I always get a kick out of this. This is the kind of things that I've done. I get a kick when I actually see how it impacts me. So I'll just give you one story on this. When my son was born, it disrupted my wife's and my routine, in a lot of different ways. But one of the things it disrupted was our normal Saturday morning trip to the grocery store. So for weeks, we didn't go. Finally, we got ourselves a little more organized, and Saturday morning, we went off to the grocery store. And one of the things that we would do is we'd pick up my wife's favorite breakfast, which happened to be, we'd pick up 6 containers of Dannon no-fat plain yogurt. I don't know how many of you get that. Apparently not very many. But every week, there were 6 containers right there. I'd take them off the shelf, put them in the cart. Well, I go that Saturday morning, and they're not there. In fact, there's not an open space like they forgot to stock the shelves or they were out of them. They were gone. Something else was in that space. And of course, I immediately knew what had happened. I looked at it and they said, okay, their inventory management system said, all right, we've got customers who buy 6 containers of this and they're not here anymore, so we're not buying 6 containers, just won't be there. And I felt, a little bummed, and it felt like I was kind of caught in my own trap. Oh, darn it, I built these kinds of systems, I know how they work, and this is what they do to me. And we took our groceries and we checked out, we scanned our card, and we went home. And then the funny thing happened. The next Saturday morning, go back to the grocery store, there's 6 containers of Dannon non-fat plain yogurt there. I mean, their system, once we had scanned our card, it said, they're back. We know these people. These folks buy 6 containers of Dannon non-fat yogurt. Now, the reason I tell this is 17 years ago when my son was born. And grocery stores were personalizing themselves automatically for each individual customer that walked in the door. And today, you see in many of the things you encounter, personalization, whether you're using Netflix, Amazon, you name it. It's pervasive. So now let's consider education. The question is, can our education system be set up to meet the unique needs and the goals of each individual student? And I'm going to argue not only that it can, but that it's being done now, in districts across the country. It can be done at scale, and that's what we have set out to do in eScholar. Because if we can do that, the impact will be dramatic. So let me explain to you why. Now let's just think about education. We talked about yogurt, having 6 containers of exactly the yogurt we wanted. Okay, that's great and that's wonderful and it improves my life a little bit. But think about what education does. I mean, education is the thing that gave me the ability to go from being living in a trailer on a farm in eastern Kentucky to being here. The impact can be huge. It's very, very different than let's make sure I've got the right product on the shelf for the right customer. This is what eScholar is focused on, is creating those kinds of opportunities for millions of students. So let's think about it. Why is this difficult to do in education? As I mentioned, in every other field that I've been involved in, we've used data to serve customers and end users. In education, when we pulled data together, remember we started doing this almost 20 years ago. Still today, most of those data are used for accountability reports, and they're put in the hands of the people running the education system. And I'm not saying that that's bad. I mean, that's good. That's a good, worthwhile thing to do. Value comes out of it. But the real value comes from putting data in the hands of educators right on the ground, right where they're working with students in a way that they can use those data to help. The situation is changing. Now, if you go back a few years, what that meant, putting data in your hands as educators, people did it. They did it 17 years ago, and they're doing it today. But one of the things that's changed is user interfaces. Used to be, We put data in your hand and go, okay, learn this tool. You can drag and drop these things and create the report that you want. Well, that required that you got training, learned how not to double count things. You know, today you don't have to be an Excel guru or an expert on how to drag and drop the right information so you get the right answer. There are interfaces that can actually show you the data that you need right now to help students. For a moment, let me just give you a parallel in the healthcare industry. So one of the arguments you might have about, here's why I don't use data, I'm really busy as a teacher. We understand that, I know that's a fact. Okay, healthcare professionals are really busy as well. And that's probably one of the reasons that we didn't see a very fast uptake of the use of data in healthcare for a long time. Because the idea of handing them a tool where they could create their own report from scratch didn't work. They just didn't have time for it. Okay, but what's happened in that field, and you've probably seen it when you've been to the doctor's office, is, okay, now they have systems where the user interface is designed to be exactly what the healthcare professional needs right now to do their job. They have their accountability reports. They count up the number of bypass surgeries that they do and the utilization of all the beds in the hospital and all kinds of things like that. But now what's really changing the quality of care is they can actually put the relevant information about your medical history, all of those things right there in the hands of the caregiver right now when they're doing something to help you. What we found with healthcare, and we've seen the same thing in education, is I need what I need right now so I can use it, and I need it now or never. I don't need to spend 10 minutes trying to put together the right report for it. So those are things that are changing our ability to use data and technology to help students. And so we're seeing the same kinds of things happening now in education because the user interfaces have gotten better, the systems have gotten better, and you don't have to drag and drop and build your own report. But one of the things we still see is we still see a limited impact from the use of data and technology across education. And a few years ago, we started asking ourselves, you know, why is that? Technology's gotten better. We've gotten more comprehensive data, and we're getting more usage. It continues to grow. We're doing something valuable, but what's it really going to take for this to break through and be something that's really going to change education and improve it? One of the things we decided to do is we decided to go out and talk to students, parents, and teachers and really ask them, okay, what are the things that we could do to help? What are the things that you find challenging in education and the things that you would like to see changed? And before I tell you what we found when we went and asked them, I'd like to ask you a few questions. One, I want to ask you, how many of you, so you're welcome to raise your hands here on this, I'd really like to know, how many of you got into education because what you wanted to do was help students achieve the best with their life? I've got to see more hands than that. I know there are more hands than that. Okay, that's a lot of hands. That's good. All right. There's another question. How many of you believe that the best of your life is different for each individual student? Okay. A lot of the same hands. Not every single one of the same hands, but a lot of them. All right, here's the third question. How many of you believe that our education system is set up and organized to focus on each individual student achieving the best with their life? I don't see any hands. So I appreciate the feedback. I've asked this question a number of times. This is what we need to change, and we can. And I'll tell you, it is changing. And until we change this, the impact of all of these things that we're doing, data, technology, personal devices, all that kind of stuff, will continue to be limited. But what we need to do is take data and technology and use those in a way that allows educators to do what they're passionate about and what they do best, which is help each individual student succeed with their lives. Now, I know that a lot of you do that today, probably all of you. But I would argue that you do it despite the system and not because of it. I want to talk for a second about students. We've spent a lot of time with students over the past several years and trying to understand their perspective. A couple of years ago, we started doing a contest where students could write essays about their education, how important it was. They could do videos. And last year, we asked students about their goals, what they wanted to do with their lives, what they wanted to do in school, just their goals. It was a pretty general question. Let me show you some of what we heard from them. I'll let you hear directly from these students.
I'm 17 years old, and a goal I'd like to achieve is to make a living doing what I love, which is making music. I think life should be about happiness and doing what you love, and be able to generate a steady income doing whatever that is. To me, that's the ultimate goal.
As a fourth grader, I have 3 goals that I'm working on right now. First is the spelling bee. My goal for the spelling bee is to slow down and think about the word I'm spelling. My motivation is to be the best me I can be.
I just wanted to say that my goal is to influence people in a positive way. A lot of people, they don't believe in themselves, and they don't understand, like, there's somebody out there that cares about you.
I also have a lot of goals, and today I would like to talk about one of those goals. At the first of the year, I set up a goal to place top 10 at the 4th grade Hershey track meet.
Well, one of the things that really struck me about that, and those are just a few examples of what we saw and we heard from individual students, was the uniqueness of their goals. They all wanted to do something different, whether it was win an athletic competition, spelling bee, or do things that were going to help other students realize how valued they were in society. It was very interesting, and the question is, okay, can we use this kind of information about students' goals to help connect their education to what they want to do? I would argue that we can. And in fact, that students can do that. It's interesting, I had students explain to me the physics of basketball. Not being a basketball player, I didn't understand that, but I've had students explain that to me. The physics of baseball. My daughter explained to me that chemistry is actually all math. I didn't know that. I thought I was pretty good at chemistry when I was a kid, but I didn't realize it was all math. I mean, kids can see the relevance of things that they're doing in school and how they can get to their goals, and we can help them do that. And the thing that eScholar is looking to do is to help educators, help students see how to connect their goals to what they're doing in school right now, and really try to address how students are engaged in school. One of the biggest challenges we've got is students being engaged in school. So if they can see the relevance of what they're doing in school today to the goals that are important to them, this can be incredibly powerful. I'm not going to argue that this is easy, but what we're looking to do in eScholar and what we're doing is to make that less difficult. Now, we started talking to teachers and students about what they wanted to see in the education system. What we found was they wanted complementary things. What teachers wanted is they wanted more time to be able to know their students better and to work with them individually to achieve success in the eyes of each individual student. What we heard from students was that they wanted their teachers to know them better, to understand what they wanted to do and help them go and achieve it. They were both asking for the same thing. And we realized this is a role we could play. We can put information in your hands as teachers about what students want to do. They can share that information about their goals. So we can't fix the time problem, but what we can do is we can give you better information about where a student stands toward their goals and what their goals are, and help you bring those things together. That brings me to a term that we've been using a lot lately around personalized education. I talked about in all these other fields that I've been involved in the past, everything was about personalization. Well, we're talking about personalized education. I realize it's similar to the term that we hear a lot now about personalized learning. I would argue that personalized learning is kind of redundant because, first off, only individual people learn. So it's personal by definition if I'm learning here. What I'm talking about with personalized education is taking the education system and focusing it on the individual needs and goals of each individual student. So it's a lot more than just personalized learning. And what we found is the key to personalized education is student goals. Those are the things that are different for each and every student. And then when you look at the combination of the skills and the capabilities that they've got right now and their goals, every single one of them is different. So we need to know their skills, we need to know where they are in terms of their progression toward their goals, and we need to know their goals. This is what gives us the ability to help students move forward toward their goals. Not just forward, but forward toward their goals. Not just forward to the next grade and to the next skill that they need to learn, but forward toward their goals. There we go. I knew that was going to come up. This graph depicts what we found when we started talking to students about their goals. The vertical axis, we're looking at what we're calling the boldness or the size of student goals. And the horizontal axis, we're looking at where students are in their lives. What was really interesting about this when we looked at this, and one of the questions when you ask about goals, one pushback we've gotten is people say, oh, student goals sound really great. Let's start talking about them when they're in high school or so and they can start figuring out what their careers are. Well, look at this graph, and let me tell you about it. The boldness of the goals seemed to peak in elementary school, somewhere around 4th grade. It's when they wanted to do big things. You get into middle school and high school, students become more realistic. Get toward the end of college, a lot of them are thinking about, I just want to get a job. I want to pay my student loans. That's what I want to do. Get to be about my age, most of us, we just want to retire. So what we need to do is engage students in their goals and how their education can help them achieve their goals. And we need to do it when they're in about 4th grade. Here are the kinds of things they want to do when they're in about 4th grade. This is when they want to write music that will touch people's hearts. They want to write a novel that will transport people to other places. They want to build things. They want to build spacecraft that will take us to other planets. They want to end wars. They want to end discrimination. They want to achieve big and powerful goals. You know what's the most popular thing that students wanted to do when we surveyed them in elementary school? They want to be teachers. They want to do big and powerful things. They want to help other students achieve their goals. So we have to engage students in their goals early. Now, what about students that don't have goals? Because when we did our survey, we found that the majority, maybe it was a slight majority, maybe 60% of students couldn't really articulate any particular goal at that point in time. I think we've all probably been there. This is a very important role that teachers can play, is helping students set goals, helping students understand what they can do with their lives and with their skills and with their interests. And realize, especially when you look at the beginning of this graph, how important teachers are in this equation. In fact, I would argue, if we engage students in their goals when they're in elementary school and they can see how their education relates to those goals, and they can see a track to get to achieve their goals, we can actually change the shape of this graph. I think it's a tragedy that it trails off to nothing when we get older. So once we know goals, what can we do with those things? I'll give you one example. Remember we talk about, and we help manage data, and I want to be clear, eScholar doesn't own any of these data. We're helping you educators manage data for millions of students, billions of records of data. So there are things that we've worked with a number of your colleagues to see. For example, if we know that a student wants to be an architect when she grows up, there's data about students who've grown up to be architects in there. Of those millions of students, there are students who have grown up to be architects. And we can show her that these are some of the relevant things you need to do. If you want to be a veterinarian, okay, these are the kinds of things, courses you want to take, grades you want to get, so you're ready for organic chemistry when you get to your freshman year in college. This can be incredibly valuable. If we have both the goals of the student and these data, we can show them the tracks to actually achieving their goals. One other inhibitor for students that we can address with data is this belief that nobody like me ever went and achieved anything. It's prevalent. I grew up with that. I mean, where I grew up in Kentucky, the biggest aspiration was to go work on the farm. What we can see in the data is if you think nobody like you ever went and achieved anything, you're wrong. I don't care how you define like you. If you say nobody like me, a C student like me, that wasn't me actually, but if I was a C student, you look in the data, there are C students who've gone and done really amazing things. Nobody like me in this bad neighborhood ever went and did anything great. It's not true. You can look in the data, it's simply not true. So we can debunk that whole myth right there. I had that debunked for me because when I was in high school, one of my good friends that I hung out and I hunted and fished with and everything like that, he got a scholarship to go to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Like for me, that was a huge wake-up call. It's like my friend Steve, who he and I were kind of similarly nerdly, and like he's going off to do great and powerful things. It's like, well, I guess I could do that. You know, maybe not that. I wasn't able to get into the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, but I decided I was going to go off and do something. We don't want that to happen by luck. I was lucky that happened to me. We can do that systematically. We can look at the data and we can show them. However you think about yourself, somebody like you went off and did great and powerful things. So we've been talking about personalized education. And you might say, well, that's really cool and that's terrific, but what about high-stakes tests? I mean, our education system today, it doesn't measure students achieving their goals. It measures students achieving test scores. That's what it does. And I know there's an argument that the focus on tests can take away your ability to focus on individual students and their needs. And this too, we're seeing across the country, we are seeing good news here as well. Is a shift toward smaller, less disruptive, more focused assessments, 5-minute formative assessments, teacher observation. When you look at teacher observation on a big scale, you find that, and this is, I'm giving you a great compliment here as teachers, apparently you do a really good job of observing because teacher observation is a terrific predictor of future success in other endeavors. It works. And we're seeing adaptive assessments that don't continue to focus on something that you already have mastered, but they'll move on to things that you haven't yet. So what we see is when you have assessments that can help show a teacher, this is where the student stands with their skills, these are their goals, then you can put those things together and help students achieve each and every one of their individual goals. What about the really high stakes assessments, like the college entrance exams? This has been really interesting for us in eScholar because some of our statewide customers have been looking at, okay, how predictive is high school and other coursework toward college readiness? Here. We all care about college readiness. Well, what we find is Courses and grades in high school and middle school and elementary school are very valuable predictors of student success. Now, not only are they valuable predictors of, quote, college readiness, but they can predict college readiness at a much finer grained detail. It's not just just think about college readiness. Are you ready or not ready? Like, no, you really want to know, am I ready for organic chemistry? Am I ready to write at a college level? Those are the things that really matter. Well, what we can see from courses and grades is you can see those things, and you can see them early. We can see in 8th grade whether you're on track to be prepared to do college level work. We can see it in 8th grade. A college entrance exam, you might find out in your junior year that they don't think you're ready. It's like, now what do you do? We can see this in 8th grade or earlier. Okay, you're not on track right now. And even better, we can see from the results that other students got from taking these courses and achieving these grades, if next year you take this course and you achieve a B, your odds go up of being college ready when you get to your senior year. So you can actually see at a much finer level of detail using the data that you're producing. It's very valid stuff. Your grades in the courses that you're teaching. And we've got more detailed information to help students with. We've got it earlier, and we can take action on it and improve students' success. So finally, what I want to do, I'll be around here for the rest of the conference. I'd love to hear from you. I hear from lots of you all the time, and I would like to continue that. So we've done a lot in 17 years, and there's a lot more for us to do. I think we're on the verge of making a huge change. It's happening right now. It's just not happening at the scale that I would like to see it. We see this happening on a district-wide basis. I want to see it happening on a national basis. So going with the theme of this conference, and I think this is very appropriate, I believe education absolutely will be transformed, and that it is. And it's not going to be transformed by some big pronouncement by some famous person. I want to tell you some of the things that we see. We see that technology and data can be used to help educators do what they do best. We see that as incredibly important here. Not something that's going to thwart you, but something that's going to help you do what you do best through the power of personalizing education. And we see transformation of assessments to being something that's much more usable, moving from monolithic, skill inventories to something that's more usable right there on the ground. And I'll give you my prediction from what I've seen. And I can make this prediction because I'm seeing this happen. My prediction is that you will do great and powerful things, helping individual students achieve the lives that they want to live. And we'll be there to help you. Thank you. Do we have time for questions? Does anybody have any questions? I'm assuming that we have time then for questions. All right, I'm not sure if I don't see anybody raising their hands for questions. So, all right, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Carry on with your day. Thanks for coming.